Have you ever found yourself watching Pokemon and then questioning, wait, where exactly are they right now? If so, then you're in the right place. I'm here to tackle that very question for hopefully the entirety of Ash's journey, starting in, for this video, the Kanto region. Keep in mind there's going to be a ton of inferring and headcanon, or just straight up guessing for a lot of these locations, because it gets pretty damn bad. Also, you'll soon see that I remade the entirety of Kanto's map to include all of those anime original locations. And as a reference, I did use the Let's Go map from the trailer, because this one's just way more detailed. And plus, it's the most recent map we have. Anyway, let's run it. The beginning is fairly straightforward. Ash woke up in Pallet Town, got his Pikachu from Oak, and traveled through Route 1. Upon reaching Vermillion City, Ash stayed the night at the Pokemon Center with Misty, who was now following him around in hopes of being paid back for a new bike. They then entered Viridian Forest for 2 episodes. Ash captured a Caterpie, who evolved into a Metapod, then a Butterfree with the help of a Beedrill and a Samurai Larper. In episode 5, they spent the whole episode in Pewter City while getting his first badge. Following that, they began their trek down Route 3, and that's when Brock joined the party. And in the next episode, they made it in and out of Mount Moon. Episode 8 rolled around and they had successfully reached Cerulean City, to Misty's dismay. While here, Ash successfully cheated his way out of his second badge now. In episode 8, on the outskirts of Cerulean, they found Damien's unofficial gym. Here, they noted their next destination is Vermillion City, because Misty wants to see the Saint Anne. Plus, there's a gym there. At least that's where they said they were going. In actuality, the gang headed north for some reason, probably by accident, because unlike the games, talking to Bill isn't a requirement. Anyway, on the Cerulean outskirts, they found 1, like I said, Damien's unofficial Pokemon gym, and 2, the Pokemon Academy, one of the other ways you can participate in the Pokemon League besides getting the badges. Now, the reason I said those 2 locations are on Cerulean's outskirts and not officially Route 24 yet, is because in episode 10, they found themselves atop a bridge. Now, don't be fooled, there's no secret Team Rocket recruiting scheme nor a shiny golden nugget reward at the end, though it's still a bridge on the way to Bill's house, so this must be the anime's replacement for it. Unfortunately, they don't make it across. The rope bridge snaps, leading them downstream to the hidden village, which is just a single house. Since we're officially off grid now, it is inferring time. Taking into account that rivers usually flow towards the ocean, its torrent likely naturally heads eastward, so we can assume they're roughly here. It's so funny because it's at this point, episode 11, where Misty mentioned they've been on the road to Vermillion City for 10 days now.
We've been looking for Vermillion City for 10 whole days!
Confirming they've still been trying to get there the whole time. Guys, you went the complete wrong direction. Did you just pick a direction and go? Did you ask anyone which direction Vermillion might be in? I mean, Brock usually has a map. Brock, look at your map. What the frick, man? But yeah, they're obviously still following the game's path somewhat. Ash mentioned the closest official route is 24, soon leading them to the conclusion that if they cross this mountain pass, they'd be on the route to Vermillion City. But the key point here is they need to cross a mountain to start making their way towards Vermillion, meaning they must have somehow already crossed or gone around this mountain before, since the only mountainous area around here is on Route 24. By the way, Saffron is on the way to Vermillion. Why don't they try going there before Vermillion? I don't know. Well, I mean, I do know. It's because it's not the game's route, but it's kind of funny. They're following the game's route, even though it makes no sense for them to. There was no mention of a Team Rocket takeover, nor a thirsty guard, or any reason really why they skipped the most bustling city in Kanto. Anyway, they then found a hidden away Pokemon Center in the middle of nowhere. Ash mentioned,
Route 24 can't be too far.
Once he saw it, so let's take his word as fact and infer the Pokemon Center is right around here, on the western end of this mountain range. Of course, here Ash saved Damien's abandoned Charmander, and they continued onto Route 24. Finally back on an official route now, they must have taken the lower route back to the city, because Nugget Bridge is currently unusable, as we know, is what I would say if this was the games. However, the anime is a whole new beast, because if you remember, there is no lower route back under Nugget Bridge in this version, meaning they must have traveled the entire river's course until reaching Route 4. Here, Officer Jenny found them and took the trio back to what I can only assume is a more rural side of Cerulean, though not quite the outskirts. Then the gang took a break with some fishing before starting up their journey again. Alright, this part is hilarious. While they were just enjoying their day off adventuring, finally able to relax after making it back to civilization again, they got abducted by the Squirtle Squad, who I am assuming takes them pretty damn far upstream and possibly into those same mountains again. Because after resolving all of these shenanigans, it's only a few episodes later before somehow encountering Bill's lighthouse, which is is the reason I said they were going north in the first place. Also the fact that there's no other rivers or streams around here. Before that though, to get a potion for Pikachu, Ash embarked on a journey to the nearest civilization, which you would assume to be Cerulean, right? Wrong! Well, you might be right. But Ash was flung off course again after another rope bridge broke on him, landing right onto a Goldine's horn. Note to self, do not use the rope bridges in Kanto. And taking into account the next episode is Bill's episode, we can assume the Squirtle Squad took them to somewhere on the water side of this mountain range. I mean, it only makes sense that they'd be close to the water with them being water types and all, right? So with that being said, this might even be somewhat close to the hidden village where Ash got Bulbasaur before. Not that he would have any reason to know that. Also, keep in mind they're in a cave on a pretty high up mountain, because Ash leaves the cave and immediately goes at a pretty steep angle downwards. Ash simply ran in a direction to find an unnamed town Brock mentioned, which we can assume is Cerulean since it's the only civilization they've been to in the last 2 weeks. But since the bridge back was now broken, when Ash found another one, he had no choice but to cross it because he knew Nugget Bridge was inoperable. It's his best shot. Either way though, the second rope bridge also broke and Ash fell into the same river and drifted downstream again, until coming ashore on the south side of the river. Now, the reason I said it's the other side is because Ash will soon come ashore, find an old western style town, and the same Officer Jenny from the Squirtle Squad case saves Ash from getting blasted. We can assume this Jenny probably patrols Cerulean and the surrounding villages and towns, right? So it's only natural she'd come across Ash here, on this side of the water. Though I would never take a motorcycle across a rope bridge, but it seemed like she was ready to. Here's what I have trouble understanding though. Officer Jenny found the rope bridge that fell apart when Ash walked across it, then said this, and continued down the cliffside until reaching a tiny cave, which she dubbed as a shortcut. This is no ordinary shortcut either, since it led him straight to the very same cave the Squirtle Squad were keeping Misty, Brock, and Pikachu, meaning Jenny must be very, freakishly well acquainted with the surrounding geography, but that's besides the point. I double-checked this because there's no possible point where any part of the mountain would cross over the river. So how does this make any Euclidean sense? Well, hold on. We can assume that old western town was to the east of Cerulean, and a little north of the official Route 9, and there's somewhere near the river that has a tiny cave, which I guess we have to say travels deep below the river and all the way up the mountain, which connects to the very same hideout the Squirtle Squad have been using, which Jenny knows about because she was obsessed with this case like Hank to Heisenberg. That's the best I've got. Ash went spelunking under a river, up a mountain. That same cave led directly to the Squirtle Squad's hideout. I don't know. That's all I've got. If you got something better, let me know, because this part really baffled me. Anyway, finally on episode 13 now, Ash and the gang, with their newfound member in Squirtle, immediately return to being lost upon exiting the cave. I feel like their sense of direction is substantially worse when Misty, Brock, and Ash are working together, or rather against each other, because last episode Ash had a pretty damn good sense of direction all on his own. He found that old western town and returned back all in less than 24 hours. Perhaps Ash suggested spelunking again down that same cave, but was denied, probably by Misty, and decided they'd try to find a different way around. Anyway, they stumbled past the mountain range, through the forest near Route 25, and somehow accidentally found Bill's lighthouse on the dang peninsula. Alright, well, after witnessing a giant Dragonite and spending the night in Bill's lighthouse, they could finally get back to an official route in Route 25. So back on track to Vermillion now. Between the end of episode 13 and the beginning of 14, there's a bit of a time skip. They backtracked through routes 25, 24, around the river, through Route 4, through Cerulean, down Route 5, and like I said earlier, they skipped Saffron for no reason. They're just really dead set on Vermillion, I guess. You know, it would be funny if they went through Saffron too, but they didn't realize it had a gym there, because the only reason they're so focused on Vermillion is because Misty wants to see the St. Anne. But still, you'd think they'd at least check for any badges in the city, the biggest city that they've encountered thus far. In fact, I think this is considered the biggest city in Kanto. But in any case, they, I assume, traverse through or around Saffron City and Route 9, and then finish off at the port city of Vermillion. While here, Ash defeated Lieutenant Surge, and then the next day boarded the St. Anne with Brock and Misty. And as we all know, this was the St. Anne's final voyage. Alas, it sunk midway through their cruise. Well, they were back on track for a total of 1 episode. Now we're really gonna have to start bringing out some headcanon because I have no idea where this ship may have sunk. Before long, they managed to escape the sunken cruise liner, but were then caught up in a school of Gyarados' collective dragon rage, catching them all in a monstrous water spout, causing them to lose consciousness and wash ashore explore on the island of giant Pokemon. So at this point, episode 17 is where it gets pretty dang funky, because I don't know about you guys, but I don't remember any island of giant Pokemon in Pokemon Red or Green. However, we can use some deductive reasoning here. While this is a tropical island, the town, or rather the city, they eventually reach in 5 more episodes is Saffron, which hardly makes any sense unless we again skipped something. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say they didn't make it too far though. It is stated that the SSN travels the world, though Giovanni owns the island of giant Pokemon, and I don't think he'd operate too far outside of his own region, but it's safe to say they at least left Kanto. In fact, I'd even wager our gang landed up on the Sevi Islands. After all, they're tropical locations based directly south of Kanto. Let's just assume their party washed ashore on 2 Island, or any of the other numbered islands, otherwise known as the Island of Giant Pokemon, which is directly connected to the port city of Acapulco, or Alpuco in Japanese, which they eventually reach after destroying the entire theme park. Well, half them and half Team Rocket, I suppose. In episode 18, during their visit to Acapulco, Ash stole a boat, apparently accidentally, and they crashed it into Team Rocket's submarine, so they had to stay here for a bit to pay the owner back. Also, Misty participated in a beauty contest where James got some massive honkers, and then headed to the next port city on that same island to reach the only place where ferries return to the mainland, Hatoba Port, or Hutbert Port in English. Oh yeah, these 2 cities together are called Porta Vista. Episode 19 came around and they dealt with the Kaiju Tentacruel while in Hatoba Ports and soon rode the ferry back to mainland Kanto. It's a little strange the ferry didn't take them to Vermillion, but let's ignore that because we've got another anime-exclusive location in Maiden's Cape, or Maiden's Peak in English. All we know, geographically speaking, about Maiden's Cape is its relativity to Saffron City, since that's the next city they reach, and I suppose also that it's nearby water, which leads me to believe this ferry must make multiple stops, and Ash and company just decided to get off in the innermost part of the bay and closest port to Saffron, which I'm placing right on the northeasternmost point of the Tokyo Bay. After Brock and James fell in love with a ghost, they made their way to Saffron the next day. This is another questionable point, because here Brock looked at a map saying,
"The map says that this ridge leads right to Saffron City."
Ash released his Butterfree on this coastal pathway, but soon abandoned this waterside path thanks to Ash's idea of a shortcut, and headed northeast towards Saffron through the forest. With that being said, I'd imagine if they kept up Brock's original path, they would have ended up somewhere around Route 6 after circling the forest, meaning this is one of those rare times Ash actually wasn't wrong about a supposed shortcut, though I will say they did get lost during that shortcut and only managed to escape thanks to Sabrina's help. It's almost like Sabrina was awaiting their arrival and then saw they were getting lost again, or even she remembered them passing through Saffron before but was confused about why they didn't visit her gym, so she wanted to make sure they made it this time around. Anyway though, thanks to Sabrina's help, Ash nearly falling off a cliff and dying, they got unlost and reached Saffron City. The following day, Ash challenged Sabrina, though he was utterly curb stomped, so that same episode he headed over to Lavender Town to catch himself a ghost type. In Pokemon Tower, Ash actually does die this time, however is soon revived, and the next day the trio headed back to Saffron with Ash's new Haunter, where Ash had another false victory, this time not out of pity but laughter. And so, episode 24 ended with them heading off to Celadon City. Episode 25 was the surprisingly rare occurrence of an episode taking place on an official route, that being Route 8, where Ash caught his Primeape. Then, much to my surprise as well, without any buffers, roadblocks, obstacles, or even detours, they had successfully reached Celadon. During the following few episodes, Ash half won his badge, they found and saved a bunch of missing children, Misty got a Psyduck, and Brock almost got a girl. However, he did receive her Vulpix. Episode 29 began with them having left Celadon, starting their trip to Fuchsia City. At this point in time, they were on a very rare paved road in Pokemon, so I'm gonna go off on a limb here and assume this paved road connects to Cycling Road, the only other major paved road in Kanto. However, they don't make it the full way, or maybe the funnier option, they do make it the full way, but were denied entry because of their lack of bicycles. In any case, they eventually reached a gas station, and while there learned about the Pokemon fighting tournament. And so they headed back into Celadon to compete in some Pokemon boxing, where Ash left his newly caught and evolved Primeape to participate in the boxing league to hopefully become a champ. I don't think we see Primeape ever again after this, so maybe he did. I don't know, man. maybe not. En route to Fuchsia, they reached Gunjo City, or Gringy City in English, a factory-laden location overrun with pollution, leading to it being virtually abandoned. There is a power plant here, but I don't believe it's the same one as the one along Route 9, since they, 1, didn't go through Rock Tunnel in the next episodes, and 2, that would be completely out of the way, so I can only assume they backtracked through Route 8, then Saffron, then Route 6, Vermillion City, Route 11, and then I placed this city somewhere along the edge of the map on Route 11. After helping aid in the restoration of power to the city, they headed down to Route 13. At the beginning of episode 31, it shows them leaving, I believe, a different unnamed city, and leaving in the opposite direction of the water, which leads me to surmise this was right on the southeastern corner of Kanto, because their next destination is, of course, Fuchsia City, or rather Fuchsia Gym, because in this version it's completely separate from the city. Anyway, after defeating Koga, he got himself the 6th badge, and we're not even halfway through. This is only episode 32. There are 80-something episodes in this anime. What happened there? Well, you'll see. You'll see. It gets wild. All right. Anyway, let's keep going. All right. So at the beginning of episode 33, it's stated by the narrator, Ash has reached Safari Land, an anime-exclusive Pokemon reserve, which appears to be close to the Safari Zone and is also home to a Pokemon racecourse, which Ash participated in, the Laramie Big P Ranch, and the Laramie Village. At the beginning of episode 34, the narrator says they go through a great savanna on their way to the Safari Zone and are now deep in a thick jungle. Holy moly, that sounds like a long-ass trek to the Safari Zone in this version. This is still only the reserve. Finally, in episode 35, they reach the Safari Zone where Ash, of course, caught his tons and tons of Tauros. It's kinda hilarious how there were about like 3 or 4 episodes leading up to the Safari Zone. Ash was super excited to go, and then it ended up being cut in the English version. Damn. When I initially watched this part of the anime, I thought they just skipped over Fuchsia City entirely and replaced it with Safari Land, and of course the surrounding settlements. But then I realized the unnamed city they started episode 36 in must be Fuchsia, especially since it's directly connected to Cycling Road. Normally they'd have no reason to actually cross Cycling Road, but Nurse Joy requested that they bring a special medicine over to not Celadon, but Sunnytown, which means that paved road we saw earlier leading to Celadon likely connects to Sunnytown and not Fuchsia like I thought. That is, if all my assumptions so far have been correct. There are probably a lot of things I'm getting wrong, so if there is anything you've noticed, feel free to let me know down in the comments so I can clarify it and pin it to the top comment. Anyway, they heeded Joy's plea and made their way across the bridge, and thus delivered the medicine. The next day, they backtracked across the bridge again to make their way to Cinnabar Island, continuing through where Fuchsia should have been, which I'll just dub an extension of Route 19, or you can feel free to call this Safari Land as well, I don't know. They found and visited Duplica's seemingly abandoned Mimicry House Theater to wait out the rain inside of, yet another anime-exclusive location. Once the rain cleared, they continued that anime-exclusive train and reached Matcha City. Awesome name for a city, by the way. Unfortunately, this was a place Porygon would soon become wrongfully blamed for Pikachu's seizure-inducing attack. Episode 39 rolled around and they reached a beach I can only assume it's Route 19's. It just took a lot of time to get here. Anyway, they take a quick detour, you know, nothing too crazy, just to the North Pole to bring this Jinx back to Santa Claus because it's Christmas, apparently? Oh no. Guys, it's a mess. It's a mess. In the next episode, I don't know if we're still in the North Pole, but we are in some snowy adjacent mountains. And I also know that Lapras helped them get to the North Pole, and Santa did explicitly request for them to, quote, take these children back to where they were before, end quote. But here's the thing, I have reason to believe Lapras, well, she didn't take them the whole way back to Route 19. Here's why. It took them a whopping total of 21 episodes before reaching Cinnabar. A little weird if they went right to Cinnabar after Lapras dropped them off at Route 19. You'd expect most of these episodes to be on the water or island hopping to get to Cinnabar eventually, but they are landlocked for the majority of this journey. In fact, the snowy theme continues for one more episode after the Christmas one. So I ask you this, what's a Japanese Pokemon region with a distinct snowy biome and also not a lot of water? Well, it's not Hoenn, they've got a desert, lots of water, and no snow. Can't be Johto, again, no snow. So what are we left with? That's right, Sinnoh! And it fits these parameters perfectly. Not only is it the northernmost Japanese region, allowing it to make complete sense for Lapras to drop them off here. Hell, the trio might have even asked Lapras to drop them off to save her some trouble. But also, the northernmost part of Sinnoh is snowy. The folks at OLM were damn geniuses, you know? Well, round of applause for OLM. I am sure that this was not a complete coincidence and this just worked out in my favor. Nope, not at all. Holy shit. I can't believe I spun this to make sense. Okay, anyway, let's keep going. This means the gang perilously traveled the entirety of Sinnoh and any other yet unnamed Japanese regions until reaching their very own Kanto once again, which they still had to backtrack through the entirety of to reach Route 19's beach again. In any case, with 41, they kept the consistency of the snowy mountain in the background, so they've officially left Snow Point. Then they stumbled across Stone Town, the foot of Mount Shinka, another nearby mountain where trainers all over the world come to evolve their Pokemon with evolutionary stones. After that, they passed through another unnamed village with a Snorlax. Next, they passed through Dark City and stopped a gang war on episode 44, and on 45, they passed by a traveling carnival. Yay! After which they journeyed through a town in a valley, Matsumo Town, aka Moss Green Village in English, to resupply on potions and other essentials, you know, with hundreds and hundreds of kilometers ahead of them and all. The beginning narration at the start of 47 is fucking hilarious. Somehow they found themselves in the middle of a desert. He has straight up just given up on denoting their location or even trying to ascertain where they are. Don't worry, Mr. Narrator, I've got you covered, that's why I'm here, alright? Also, with this desert, it kinda confirms they're not in Kanto. I would say they're in Hoenn because that's the only Japanese region that makes sense, with it having a desert and all, though locationally speaking, it doesn't make much sense. Because for one, in-universe, Hoenn is an island, and for two, the real Japanese region Hoenn is based on, Kyushu, sits southwest of Kanto. So let's just say somewhere in between Sinnoh and Kanto, there's an anime-exclusive region we don't know the name of. In this region, there's a desert, of course. There's a city they found called Neon Town. It's got lots of gambling and nightlife to go around. Are we in fucking Las Vegas? I think we are. Anyway, in Neon Town, Jigglypuff made everyone sleep, as we all know. In the following episode, they found Grandpa Canyon, totally not a ripoff of Grand Canyon, nope. So whatever region they're journeying through to reach Kanto is very American-based. I'm gonna use Kirito's naming scheme here and dub this region the Kanamari region. Like, Canamari, you get it? Yeah, okay. During their visit to Grandpa Canyon, they found Togepi's egg and Charmeleon evolved. Continuing in Kanamari, they reached another unnamed city to heal Pikachu, and they helped out at a hospital. Then Misty won a bunch of Hina dolls, which she sent home via delivery truck. We can't be far off now. If it's within driving distance, that doesn't mean anything, honestly. Episode 51 came about, and they were back on the green path, where the narrator noted they'd reached the entrance of a certain town. But of course, as usual, he didn't say which town. I swear to God, this has got to be the least helpful narrator of all time. Anyway, this is where James's opulent family estate is located. What we do know, though, is the surrounding city is pretty built up, and if they wanted the fastest way back without surfing, then I'd imagine they'd make a complete diagonal through these routes, which would land the estate just outside of Saffron, which makes sense for pompous rich folk. They would want to be right outside the biggest Cantonian city, after all, wouldn't they? Placing it right about here. So, after a small adventure in the mansion, they continued towards the inner city. Oh, and also the reason I placed it right here specifically is because if you look at this shot, there's mountains in the background. Where else is there mountains in the background? Well, everywhere in Kanto, let's be honest, but if you look at the actual map, on Route 9, there's that waterway, right? And if you notice, they have to travel across a bridge to reach James's estate, meaning there's a large lake, and maybe this waterway goes under the mountain, or maybe through the mountain pass, and it leads out to this little lake. Maybe. I'm gonna go with that. En route, they helped the kid realize he should return the Pokemon and belongings he stole. Nice job, guys. Well done. In episode 53, they made it to the actual inner part of Saffron once again. And while getting some grub here, Ash was finally like, oh yeah, where's my next gym again? Also, Togepi hatched here, and they battled to decide who'd get custody over it. After this pit stop in the city, they likely continued with the diagonal shortcut route, because for one, there's still a lot of locations to get through before reaching Cinnabar, and for two, those locations happen to need a home. And these two large patches of greenery bordering Route 7 are two of the only untraveled areas left. And you know what? For three, I have reason to believe the next few locations they reach are actually a lot closer together than you might think. which I'll get to my reasoning behind that soon. For now, with episode 54's start, the narrator said we're en route to Cinnabar Island, while Ash was in a battle against a random hiker who damaged his Bulbasaur pretty good. Luckily, there's a random woodland Pokemon center. I mean, seriously, look at this cabin. Who even comes to this center? At a certain point, they show a landscape shot where they're still surrounded by forests as far as the eye can see. And somewhere in that forest is the Bulbasaur Mysterious Garden, where a Venusaur leads a secluded evolutionary festival for Bulbasaur to partake in. When episode 55 begins, it seems like they're coming across 6 or so buildings making up a tiny village. Honestly, this is the closest thing I've seen so far in the anime that actually resembles the towns you encounter in the games. Here, they discovered Sakura Preschool in the middle of the wilderness. You know, I never questioned the remoteness of all these locations before, but this one really tips the scale. Where are all these children coming from? I count 14 children. Who's bringing their children all the way out to the boonies to go to the preschool? I mean, I guess 5 or 6 households for 14 children is easily possible, but still. Moving on from that village, continuing through the forest, they met... Wait, is that a male Officer Jenny? Officer Jensen? But yeah, speaking of remote locations, they stumbled across a whole police station? Or maybe solely a training ground? I'm not really sure, but anyway, let's move on. At the beginning of the next episode, we can see some more scattered houses in the background. While eating lunch at some sort of rest stop type area, their meal was interrupted by Todd, who decided to join them for a bit. After a riverside lunch, they walked to Todd's house, and upon taking down Team Rocket, they stumbled down what looks like an aqueduct, which probably takes water all across the settlement starting from Tokyo Bay. Episode 58 seems to prove my theory of all these locations being quite close together correct, because in one scene, Todd suggested going to take the Pokemon League certification exam, and they hard cut, and the next scene they're already there. I suppose this remote area is a small community of outposts in and of itself, with no more than a couple kilometers separating each building or set of buildings. I ended up looking this one up because I was very curious, and the closest thing I could find was called a dispersed or scattered settlement. Interesting. Thanks, Pokemon. We started the next episode in yet another unnamed city. In any case, while they were here, they took down Cassidy and Butch's Pokemon poaching ring, and then parted ways with Todd at a crossroads, with one party heading towards another mountain range for more pictures and another, presumably shorebound. Bye, Todd. And finally, after all these years, they reached a port which we didn't even see on screen, and we're in the water. Holy shit, guys, it's actually happening. They're back from the North Pole. So they once more trekked through Route 14, then Safariland again, and finally reached that same Route 19 beach, and then found a port and ferry, I guess. So, yep, we totally just got the entirety of Seafoam Islands. Don't you worry, though, because the anime did not forget about Seafoam, they just moved it. I don't know why. Or maybe they did forget about it at this point and then later on realized they needed to include it somehow. You'll see. You'll see when we get there. All I care is we're back on track. Let's go. This is going to be a lot easier from here on out. All right. Moving on, though, they reached Cinnabar Island, and Ash had his battle against Blaine in the most dangerous Pokemon gym battle ever conceived. I cannot believe this passed the Pokemon League inspection. They had these 10-year-old kids battling inside of a frickin' volcano. And then they soon started their way back towards Vermillion City, because Ash accidentally skipped that before because Misty was chasing him around, demanding her bike back and all. When episode 62 started, it turned out they missed the ferry back to Pallet Town, maybe? Actually, I know it's not Pallet Town, but we'll get to that. And instead, they heeded a Wartortle's call to Blastoise Island, a seemingly uninhabited by humans island. Here, Pikachu helped wake all the Blastoise, Wartortle, and Squirtles up from Jigglypuff's song, which is why they were led here in the first place. I thought they were about to go on an island-hopping adventure, right? But the next episode starts with Ash saying this.
But we're not near the ocean or any lakes.
Brother, how far did you guys go since the last episode? What do you mean you're nowhere near the ocean? What? What do you mean? Like, seriously, where the heck even are they? Yet another unnamed city? So, interesting thing here, the astute English dub viewer, which I'm assuming most of you are, will have remembered this city being Viridian, which the narrator in the English version does explicitly say.
We join Ash, Misty, and Brock at the entrance to Vermillion City.
But if we go to the Japanese version, it says they're still en route to Vermillion City. So I'm gonna go with the Japanese because that's the most right. No, but then they revealed they're not far from Cerulean City? What? What kind of cursed-ass route did you guys take back? That is completely out of the way from Viridian. What? What? Like, huh? Maybe the ferry doesn't connect to Pallet Town, or at least the coast where Pallet Town is closest to, and it only connects to the major cities, like Vermillion. Alright, let's go with that. Let's assume they reached Maiden's Peak again. Follow the same path they did before, this time without Sabrina's help, and reach Saffron that way. I think this city is actually Saffron. Yeah, because that would make sense for them to be relatively close to Cerulean City. Sabrina's probably asking what these psychos are doing here for a third time now.
Actually,
okay, with that being said, they finally reached their ultimate goal of Cerulean to give Horsey some exercise. You know, episode 64 starts off in an unnamed city again, though I surmise it might actually be Pewter, because Brock says offhandedly it's the best ice cream shop in town, meaning he's familiar with the ice cream around here to know this is definitely the best one. Or I'm just taking Brock's sentence way too literally. They leave Pewter City at the end of episode 64. At 65, they finally arrived back in Viridian, beat the gym, and then headed back to ask Professor Oak where exactly the Pokemon League is. Pretty funny since they could have just asked a local to avoid a lot of traveling. That sentence probably could be used to describe a lot of this journey. When Ash arrived home, he battled Gary to prepare for the league. Unfortunately, they arrived back here a little too early, so they decided to help out Professor Oak with some research regarding Slowpoke's evolution, so upon Oak's request, made their way to Professor Nishinomori for some aid. You guys want to know where Nishinomori lives? Apparently right next to the Seafoam Islands, which is apparently walking distance from Ash's house, which makes no sense at all because it is an island, or islands, plural? What? Funnily enough, they omitted that line in the dub. Misty and Brock went ahead of Ash for a vacation. Meanwhile, Ash was supposed to stay for independent training, but found a loophole through the professor's dismay, which I mentioned. Okay, guys, I really don't get this one. Either Ash swam all the way there, which I don't doubt he could, or the more likely option, OLM changed the location of Seafoam Islands to being a coastal town. Whatever. I know in Japanese it's just called Bines, so it would make more sense for them to do it there, and now we're left with the scraps in English, but what? It's fine. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to call it the Seafoam Coast. That sounds better. And if you were curious, they actually do show a vague geographical location as to where Nishinomori's house is, so where Bines is, or Seafoam Coast, which appears to be along the western coastline. So I'm putting it here. They spent another day here surfing it up before returning home for some independent training for the soon-coming Pokemon League. During the next few weeks, Ash continuously promised himself to do that very independent training, but slacked off nearly every day. One day, he got distracted by the Murasame greenhouse near Palette's outskirts. Then another, he visited a campsite and helped make a movie with a producer/director. Also, since movie 1 begins on a cliffside overlooking the ocean, I'm gonna say this is about the time when movie 1 takes place, since he's got all his full original team and they're still 4 or so weeks out from the league. So we've got plenty of time for a movie plot. Let's just say he went to this cliff near Kanto Wharf, the movie city, which I'm assuming is relatively close to Seafoam. Maybe it's east of Seafoam or something. But anyway, let's say he went to Kanto Wharf to train some more. I'd even wager he came to this specific spot to train against strong trainers, since it's likely one of the last major cities before the league itself. Of course, we all know upon seeking shelter from the sudden typhoon, the gang rushed back to Kanto Wharf's Pokemon Center and then made their way to the Pokemon Castle on New Island, where Ash met Mew and Mewtwo, and the entire movie's plot happened. He died again, and then they returned back to the wharf, and soon back home. Another morning came, and he was invited to Hollywood to watch a special early screening of the film they filmed the other day. So they, I assume, flew out there? Once arrived, we see Hollywood's looking rough. According to Brock, movies can't be made easily due to the recent recession. The Japanese version implies this was due to the cost of movies being significantly high enough to be economically unstable, and that their movie was the only film to come out of the festival that made any profit. Damn, that's kind of depressing. I have no idea where this Hollywood is supposed to be, but seeing as how we have now headcanoned a American region with all the American things in that region, I'm gonna say Hollywood is in Katamari. That sounds good to you? That sounds good to me. Alright, cool. They go from Pallet Town to Mount Miyazaki, or Mount Hideaway, to meet and train with Bruno, which is actually quite close to Pallet. This one I can confirm is within walking distance. Here, Bruno and the group rescued a distressed Onix. After he left, Ash attempted to continue his training on Mount Miyazaki, but it was soon interrupted by a Jigglypuff, or rather the Jigglypuff, who causes their attacks to misfire, revealing an ancient relic of Pokemonia, where they accidentally summoned a mythological ancient giant Gengar, Alakazam, and Jigglypuff. Thankfully, the latter eventually sealed them all back away. Anyway, episode 75 starts off in Oak's lab, so they've come down from the mountain. The narrator just straight up says, You know, You could really tell Ash was gonna lose this one. But apparently it's only a week out now, and Ash didn't realize it. So we finally have some more actual movement and traveling to make their way to the Indigo Plateau. Brock said they took a shortcut to the League, so the only place that would make sense is basically skipping Route 1 and 22 through this forested area. Thankfully, they avoided getting lost this time and eventually made it to a lake. You know, I think their sense of direction has gotten better over the course of the series. They've been getting better with their shortcuts, I gotta say. And then around that lake is the Indigo Plateau. The opening ceremony is the very next day, and en route, Ash takes the frickin' torch from the Torch Runner mid-run. Real dick move there, Ash. But anyway, yeah, they eventually make it to an anime-exclusive location in Competitor's Village, and by extension, the Pokemon League. I guess the badge verification doesn't exist like it does in the games, so I'll assume this runway is a replacement for that. Ash makes it further than you might expect him to, but eventually loses to Richie. And with that, we are finished. I don't know if this video is going to be, like, incomprehensible gibberish, or if it's actually going to be a good, worth-to-make video, but I made it, so here it is. Oh, good lord. All things considered, I think I did a decent enough job. I'm surprised a lot of this actually fit together as well as it did. I didn't think OLM thought this much into it, and I honestly think a lot of it still is a huge lucky coincidence. Especially the Snoke Point thing blows my mind. That I'm surprised I came up with something for that. And the Kanamari region was such BS, but it worked. It works, right? A few things here. If you're wondering why I, for one, keep changing shirts in this video, and for two, I cut my hair for a lot of these clips, it's because I kept thinking of other things to add and other things to record and clarify and yada yada yada, so that's why I look so different in a lot of these. It's because this was recorded on like probably 15 different days. And then for two, I will have the map I made available for download. I used Wonder Draft to make it. I just learned how to use this program, and it was actually pretty easy to use. This is not like a sponsorship for Wonder Draft. I just really like the program. And the map I put up for download will have the Fuchsia City fix. I know I misspelled Fuchsia City in that. I always thought it was Fuschia, but no, it's Fuchsia, apparently. I didn't know that. And you'll notice there was a big sandy area around Celadon, Saffron, and Sunnytown. It's not supposed to be sandy. I messed that up, and I was way too far into editing at the time when I realized I messed it up, so in the video it looks sandy, but you can see here in the real download, it'll be grassy. I had like a false memory of that being sandy. I don't know why. I really don't know why, but yeah, if you'll see, the surroundings are definitely, they're definitely grassy around there. It's just maybe a lighter tone of grass, but it's still grassy. Anyway, with all that being said, like this video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it, comment any thoughts you have on this video, anything you think you might want to add or clarify or change. I would be happy to discuss that. And if there's anything I messed up, definitely let me know so I can pin it to the top comment, and I will credit you, of course. And just let me know if you guys want to see this series continue. I would be happy to do Johto. I don't know if Orange Islands would work very well for this series, but it would be fun to just document all the random islands he goes to at the very least, right? But anyway, have yourselves a fantastic day, and don't forget to stay trash. Peace!